Okay, in this video what we're going to do is talk about the this keyword. And to be honest with you, we have covered the this keyword several times throughout various object-oriented videos. So this is just going to be more or less a very quick review. So what are we going to do? We're going to look at the this keyword. That's all. So this is more or less just a review video. So first of all, this keyword refers to the current instance of the class. So if we have a heap over here, and then we have our object type sitting over there, and then we were to instantiate it. So now that we have some objects, we know that over in the stack, to indicate the stack's being used, we could have a variable. Actually, let me call that something like player. And this player is going to reference a particular instance of the class. Okay? So now if we were to do something with player, where internally we had the this keyword, then we know that this is the instance that we are dealing with. Now I'm going to write out a very quick example, and we're going to give you two different ways to use the this keyword. We're going to show using it with a field, and we're also going to show using it as a means of passing itself, meaning the current instance of the class, to some other method that takes in a type of the type that the instance is. Okay? So let's go and write out some code real quick. So let's see, what do we have here? We're going to create a quick game item class. So class game item. And inside game item, what I want to do is create a public string name. And then I'm going to create a public constructor. So public game item. And as we've seen in the past, we're going to take in some information. So we're going to take in a string, and we're going to call it name. And so this is the first place we'll use this. As we know, by bringing the parameter name in, since this name is the same as the public field, the public field gets hidden inside of the constructor. So to gain access to it, we have to use the this keyword. So I can just tell it this dot name equals name. Okay, let's go ahead and end off the public constructor. Now what I'm going to do is create a public update method, since it's a game item. And inside public update, what I want to do is I'm going to make a call to a rendering engine, and we'll create a simulated rendering engine in just a second. And this rendering engine is going to be a static class, so we know that we call our methods in a static class by simply stating the static class name. So rendering engine dot draw. Now the rendering engine is going to take in a game item to draw. So I need to pass the current instance of this game item, say it's enemy 1 or player or whatever. I need to be able to pass that to the rendering engine's draw. All I have to do is say this. Because what is this? This is the current instance, and what kind of instance is it? It's a game item, because we're in a game item when we're using this. So to wrap all this up so that it makes complete sense, let's go ahead and close that off, close that class off. Now let's create a static class called rendering engine. Okay, and hang on, let me fix my little E there. Inside of our static class rendering engine, let's create a static public void, because we're not going to return anything, draw method that takes in this. Oh, my bad.
I was about to say, it takes in a game item.
No, it takes in a game item. You know what? I was currently thinking something else. I caught myself. What I was thinking in my head was ignore my casing. That's what happens when you're on autopilot and you're talking, but your head starts thinking of something else.
Ignore this. So we're going to draw. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, what I was looking at was my draw right here and my draw right here.
Ah, I see.
And as I was writing it out, I just started kind of daydreaming about it.
Because you look back at the other one, so you start thinking about it.
Yeah, I was thinking, man, I should give them a warning to just simply ignore casing. But with me, everybody should know that by now, that the way I draw on the whiteboard, I vary, between uppercase and lowercase. So anyways, yeah, we're going to be taking in a game item. And we'll call it item. And then inside here, we'll simply have it write out something along the lines of draw this item. And then we can append to that item dot name, just to demonstrate that we do have the correct instance. Okay. And we'll go ahead and finish the static class. There we go. So there we've got two classes. Now if we wanted to come up here into our main method, or wherever, of course, and then go ahead and create a few guys, we could do something like, let's see, how about make a list? Make this interesting instead of just creating one. So a list of game items. And we can call this game items. Now let's go ahead and create the new list. It's a new list of game items. Okay, now we can turn around and add something into it. So game items dot add. And what do we want to add into the list? How about a new game item that's called, because remember we have a constructor that's expecting a string, call it enemy1. So that we can identify that particular instance. Now let's turn around and do another game items dot add and send in one more instance, new game item, and we'll send in enemy2. Alright, now this is a great little refresher on working with lists too. So now we can just walk through them and update them. So we could do a for each game item, and we'll just dump them into item.
It's also a refresher on loops.
Yeah, no kidding. We're using everything in game items. And with each one, what do we want to do? We'll just say item dot update. There we go. And now let me go ahead and draw a line in here. And change my color real quick. And let's talk about what's happening. Okay, so we've got our two sets of blueprints, if you will, the game item and our render engine. The render engine is static, which means we will only have one render engine sitting over here. And he's got his one static method in it for draw. Okay, so this is the render engine. So now, when we start through, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a list of game items. And in that list of game items, we're going to simply have, well, a bunch of references to game items. So we'll turn around and we'll add a reference to a game item and instantiate a game item. So basically, we instantiate a game item. So here it comes. He gets instantiated. So there he is. And now we have a list. And we're pointing to him. Now we come in here and create another one. And by the way, this guy's name was enemy number 1. So now we add another one into our list. And what do? We're pointing at him because we just instantiated him. So here's number 2. Excellent. Now we're going to do the for each, and all we're going to do is walk through our list, which currently has 2 references in it, 2 different game items. And as we walk through the list, we're going to call on the items update. In other words, we're going to call on the current game item that we're looking at. So we all know, since we've looked at for eaches before and we've looked at lists, we start out looking at the very first one. We call item.update. So item right now is pointing to the very first one that's sitting right here. So item's pointing up here to the top. So what are we going to do? We come down here to update. And what does update do? Update says call upon the rendering engine's draw method and send ourself to it. This is the key to this. Who are we looking at? I just have to say the word. We're looking at this particular guy, which is this right there, this guy. That's who we're looking at the moment. So when we say this, we're going to send him over here to our draw method inside of rendering engine. Rendering engine is expecting to take in a game item. So that's what we have to send it. So we send it enemy number 1. We sent that game item. That's how we were able to use the this keyword, because we didn't know when we wrote the class game item and we wrote the method update, we didn't know what each instance was going to be. We just knew that the current instance that we're dealing with, if we call upon update, we need to send ourselves to the draw method.
Yeah, what it comes down to is whenever you're coding inside of a class, it very often becomes necessary or helpful to be able to tell what instance you are as you're doing various statements.
That's right.
So that way, this keyword allows you to get a handle on your own instance in code and do something with it, whether it be setting your own internal member or actually pointing a reference to yourself to something else in code.
Right.
The bottom line is this keyword is a reference to the current class that these methods reside in.
You got it. So, jumping back up here, and by the way, just to complete this whole thing, we could put game items up here. And it points down here to our list. There, now it's a little bit more accurate. Very good. All right, so let's go ahead and finish going through. So we just updated the one. Now in the loop, there's still another item. So, of course, what do? We loop back up here. We pull the next item out. So now what are we looking at? I got to get my eraser fixed, man. So now we're looking at this. There we go again using the word this. This one, which is him, the second guy that we created. So then, when we call upon update, and we call the static draw method and send this to it, well, this is number 2. That's who we're currently dealing with. So number 2 now gets sent to the draw method. And so when we see the final result of this little application echoed out to our console, we're going to see draw this item, enemy 1. Then the next line will say draw this item, enemy 2, which will indicate that using the word this, we were indeed using the current instance we were looking at. Logan, let's go ahead and code this out real quick.
All right. Let's load up Visual Studio, and let's begin a new project. This will be a new console application. So what do we have? We have 2 classes. First one is a game item. So this will be class game item. The game item class is going to have one public member, or one public field, excuse me. It'll be public string name. After that, we're going to have a public constructor for the game item class. So this will be public game item, and we're going to take in a string parameter for a name. And looking at it, let me change the casing on this name since it's public. I'm going to make it capital. Alright, and let me finish off the constructor. My train of thought got broken, so I put a terminator by it to go fix this.
Okay.
So I had to erase that terminator.
That was just a reminder mark for you to come back and finish the constructor.
In the form of a compiler error.
Exactly. So now in this particular case, we're going to go ahead and use this, so we know we're talking to the current instance. So we'll use this.name since name has been hidden. Actually, in this particular case,
if I change it, let me change it back.
Yeah, change it so it is hidden. There we go.
Yeah, that was done. I didn't see where you were using that to prove the point of the parameter hiding a field.
Yeah.
And now we want to tell the difference between the two, and we can do that by referring to ourselves. Because if we look at ourselves, we see this member, but we don't see this as a field. It's a parameter. So that's a field. Right. So if we look at ourselves, if we look at an instance of the game item class, what is it going to have for a member? Well, it's going to have a name. So this.name is going to refer to the field, whereas name by itself will return or refer to the parameter. So this is the first instance of using this in this class. So this.name, our field, is equal to name, the current name string parameter. All right. So that takes care of the public constructor. Now we should be able to move to update for game item. So this will be public void update.
And you can just skeleton it in. Let's go ahead and go and write the static class render engine.
I see. All right. So we know we're going to have update, but we need a rendering engine to continue.
Yep.
So let's move on to that. This is going to be a static class.
Because we only need one rendering engine.
And it will be called rendering engine. Inside of rendering engine, we're going to have a static method. So this will be a public static, well, not one word. There you go. Public static void draw. Draw is going to take in a game item. We can call that item. Now this draw method, since we're not really rendering anything, we'll just dump out to the console saying that we were going to draw whatever item and then give the name. So we'll do a console write line, or we can say draw the item. I'll use the, just so we don't use the word this so many times in the examples.
That sounds
so draw the following item.
All right, take item out real quick. The first item. You got to draw the item following item.
Ah, so
there we go.
That does make sense. So yeah.
And append to that item.
All right, so item.name. So draw the following item and then give the actual item name that we're about to draw.
Okay. All right, so that looks pretty good. And now let's go back up to update and finish it off with a call to the rendering engine and draw method.
Instead of update, we want to draw ourselves. So we'll call out to the rendering engine. Rendering engine is going to draw a game item. What game item do we want? Well, we're currently coding inside of game item. That means we can refer to our current instance using this. So we'll pass off this, and in doing so, give the rendering engine a reference to ourselves. And that's what we're trying to do inside of draw, because this game item is trying to draw itself using the rendering engine.
Okay.
All right, so now we should be able to test this out.
Let's go ahead and just create a few things. So first of all, let's go ahead and generate a list.
All right, let's hold a list of game items. And
well, you're good now. Yeah.
So list.
Game item. And we'll call it game items.
Game items.
And we'll go ahead and set it to a new list. We'll go ahead and generate the list now.
All right, new list. All right, so we've created a new list of game items.
All right, now let's just do gameitems.add, and we'll send it a new game item with the name enemy1.
So new game item. Game item doesn't have a default constructor anymore. Instead, it has a constructor with parameters, so we have to feed it a name. We can follow the first one, enemy1. And there is our enemy1, so closing parentheses for the constructor, closing parentheses for the add and terminator.
And copy and paste that line like 3 times or so, 3 or 4 times.
Sure. So first one, second one, third one, fourth one.
Sounds good. Now let's make enemy1, enemy2, player, and tree.
Oops.
just so we see something radically different.
I got you.
And a tree. Got to have a tree. All right, now let's just do a real quick for each loop to demonstrate calling update and showing that this helps keep everything in check, meaning that we will always refer to the correct instance of the class.
All right, so for each game item in game items, we would like to take that game item and update it.
Item.update, yeah.
So item.update. All right.
All right, and let's do a console.readline.
So jump down a few lines. There's our console read line.
All right.
Now we should be able to build. Everything is successful.
Very good. So basically what Logan's done is he's generated a list of game items, and he's gone in there and populated the list with 4 instances of the game item class. And we've set names to enemy 1, enemy 2, player, and tree so that all of the instances have a different state. And then Logan simply just walks through each of the items and calls upon its update. Now let's get more specific as what's going on. When Logan coded out game item, the first thing he had to deal with was with the public constructor, it took a parameter called name in, and name happened to be the exact same as the public data member. So because of that, this parameter hid the public data member inside of the public constructor. So to gain access to the data member, Logan had to use the keyword this. So this.name referred to this one equals name. So now we're using the parameter. So we take whatever we get passed into the public constructor and we put it over into the data member for the game item. Then we ended up calling upon update. So in calling upon update, update makes a call to the static rendering engine draw method. The static rendering engine draw method takes in a game item. Well, that was the trick. What game item do we send it? Well, we are currently inside a game item. So let's just send ourselves, whoever we may be. At the moment, we may be enemy 1. We may be enemy 2. Just the bottom line is the code that's executing that is utilizing this instance at the moment. Well, we know what instance we are with the this keyword. So we just simply send ourselves, because ourselves is a game item, to draw, which is looking for a game item. And then from inside here, we're holding that same reference. So the reference comes in an item, so we're storing it in item, allowing Logan to turn around into a console, right line, draw the following item, use that reference, which is pointing back to the current instance of game item we're looking at, .name. And that's why the name is reflected properly. Enemy 1, enemy 2, player, tree, etc. So if Logan goes ahead and runs this, bink, everything works perfectly. We walked through the list of all of our game items and we drew enemy 1, enemy 2, player, and tree. Never at any point did the code get confused as to what instance are we currently dealing with. But this keyword helped keep everything nice and organized. Anything you want to add to that, Logan?
Nothing I can think of. Just, again, its purpose is to allow you to access the current class that code resides in.
Exactly. So this was a very quick video for the simple fact that you guys have seen this several times in our videos now, and there's nothing really complicated going on to it whatsoever. It's just a great way to reference hidden members. I mean, we've seen that, and it's also a great way of passing yourself off to a method that is expecting, well, the type of yourself. And with that, that is going to wrap up this video. Thanks a lot.